So within the theme that is education reform comes the new Common Core state standards. Everybody's big question is, are these what we need in education right now? Will these right the wrongs that are left behind from No Child Left Behind and numerous previous education reform attempts?
One of the problems is that at this point we don't know what's going on. We're not well versed in what's required for Common Core. One thing I do need to say though is I think it's really unfair for the kids that are in the midst of No Child Left Behind, and now we're changing what they're learning and how they're learning, and they're completely lost. So I'm not sure if this is good for them. Okay, it's nice if the teachers know what direction we're going to, but at this point it's too general, it's too vague.
Personally, just from a social science standpoint, I think the social sciences we're already seeing they are being pushed further back because the Common Core's focus is on English and math, and like this year really all we're working on is document-based questions and helping the kids with their writing skills, and the actual teaching of history is getting lost. With the No Child Left Behind, there were state content standards and we were held accountable to those. So, and it was part of the school score. And the reality is, schools need their scores to be high. And there are a lot of negative things that come. And the fact that the social sciences were part of that score, if you will, did give us a little bit more importance in determining the school's API, but moving forward with the Common Core, there is no social science component, and the simple reality is schools need their test scores to go up, and if there's no social science component on it, unfortunately, that will be like the arts and the other things that have kind of been dropped. It will just be dropped. That's kind of how I see things going right now, so I don't know.
First of all, 45.5 states have adopted and are planning on implementing the Common Core. I say 0.5 because Minnesota has adopted the English standards but not the math. That leaves Virginia, Nebraska, Texas, and Alaska yet to adopt. And speaking of those states that have adopted, 9 states now want nothing to do with the Common Core. They have either introduced legislation to do away with it altogether or have introduced legislation to drastically reduce its funding. And it could have been some of the states that actually adopted the standards before they were published, believe it or not. This is a highly political piece here where the federal government made adopting a common set of standards mandatory in order to receive federal funding. So a lot of states, without even taking a look at what they're signing on for, said, of course, we need the money.
What I find is that we are teaching skills and not teaching what we really love, and that is events, that is, it kind of takes away your love of history. And we see that and we discuss it all the time because we all have our favorites. We like to teach the French Revolution, or we like to talk about World War I. But right now what we're really teaching are skills. That's it, skills.
My opinion on a new Common Core curriculum. Well, it's new to me. This year we came in and we heard about it last year. But as a school, we were worrying about WASP and doing other things, but then we come in and right away we jumped into it. We have our department started working on what examples of DBQs and the different outlines that we have in our curriculum. And from there, we're still in the working process to understanding more of the Common Core. We have, as a group, our department, we have looked at some of the reading standards for the Common Core, but to say that we actually have gone into depth into every single standard, we haven't. But it's a work in progress. I know that this year the juniors will be testing in May or sometime at the end of the year. So I think we're trying to get together as all departments to moving into something similar so we all can help each other in reading and writing, using documents, especially in my class, using social science documents in the classroom, learning, reading, writing. So we're working now, but it takes a while because to understand them completely is not easy. It's gonna take a while, and then plus we need sometimes professional development to let us know what's going on the Common Core.
Now, the actual standards themselves, I am actually a huge fan of them because I believe that they value critical thinking skills over rote memorization of facts, which is more closely linked to our old standards. They give teachers a lot more flexibility with how they teach things. They're a little bit more open-ended so that teachers are able to use their creativity when designing instruction for their students and not feel like they need to be on a pacing guide at this point of the year on this day and teaching very set stuff and reading from a script basically. If you can't tell, I'm a big fan of Linda Darling Hammond. She had put in one of her blog posts that the new standards should be used as guideposts, not as straitjackets. As a matter of fact, that's how all standards should be. But I felt like that sort of captured what these standards are all about.
As a future educator, I am very worried that we are becoming dangerously close to teaching our students that knowing facts doesn't matter. With the No Child Left Behind Act, we saw an act that basically told us that math and reading were the most important subjects and that everything else was superfluous and not needed. It amazes me that the State Board had an opportunity to rectify this situation and that their answer is Common Core. Common Core standards are basically the same as No Child Left Behind, only this time they've decided that the most important thing is writing essays. Social sciences, science, even math don't really have any standard at all as far as Common Core is concerned. And I don't understand how anyone could think that that is the answer.
Now, in speaking about the tests, this could be perhaps where the biggest controversy is, or maybe the biggest hope is. First of all, in business terms, there is a lot of big business around the testing industry, and Common Core is making that grow. There is the two consortia in charge of creating the tests, one being Smarter Balanced, which is the one that California is working with, and I forget what the other one is, but there are two. And as I mentioned, California is going to field test the Common Core State Standards test this year, but not the STAR test. And the federal government is upset about that because they need accountability. And California, I assume, doesn't want to put their students through two huge waves of testing, so they don't want to do the standardized tests and instead do the Common Core. Also, a study found heightened test anxiety in third graders through fifth graders who were taking high-stakes standardized tests versus classroom exams. And the link between anxiety and tests and basically performance of your knowledge is not a good one. So that is a red flag. Again, this is from Linda Darling Hammond. This is a PowerPoint slide that she presented on the assessment continuum. So this includes everything on the far left, which goes from narrow assessment moving towards the far right, assessments of deeper learning. And on the left, you have the standardized tests, which we're currently using, and only a step up from that is the Common Core tests, which are multiple choice, open-ended, and some short items. And then all the way on the right, you have more project-based testing, which takes up to 2 to 3 months, which is a lot more involved, gives students a lot more opportunity to show all of their skills. So,
the testing in social science classes boils down to DBQs. And DBQs are document-based questions. Students are given a packet with timelines and sheets full of facts, and they're then given 45 minutes to write an essay. They're not required to know the facts in advance. They're not required to have made any correlation or connection between the information in advance. They're given a packet of information designed by someone else and then told to write an essay. And that's what we consider a standard for our social sciences in today's society.
On the back side of your packet, you have a graphic organizer. Then you're going to do step 1 and step 2. Step 1 is just asking to give your hypothesis of the Chinese Exclusion Act by using that timeline that we looked at the beginning of your packet. So just tell me, how is this law? Is it going to be good, bad, whatsoever? What's your opinion on it? Yes. Then on the bottom part, A, B, C, and D, you're going to give me some evidence from each document, A, B, C, and D, about based on the support of the Chinese Exclusion Act. So what you saw there. Remember, you already took some notes down, so you should have some information. You're just going to revise it and put it in here as evidence. Is everybody clear? Yeah. Okay?
Now the politics, this could go on and on and on and on, but I tried to keep this limited. The first point is don't necessarily confuse the 45.5 states' adoption of the Common Core with their support. It doesn't necessarily indicate that, because adopting the Common Core is tied to federal funding, and there's incentive for the states to do so. In fact, like I said, some states signed on before they even saw what they were signing on for. ADHD and English language learner populations have increased since No Child Left Behind was implemented. And that could just seem like a funny correlation, but there is hard data in their reports. For example, the first 4 years after No Child Left Behind, there was a 22% increase in ADHD diagnoses. And there were states that were some of the first to implement No Child Left Behind, or adopt, I guess, and they saw a higher increase, or a much more drastic increase in ADHD diagnoses than the states that did not adopt them initially. And then the same was true of states that adopt them later on. They saw ADHD diagnoses increase, and same thing with English language learners. From 1997-98 to 2008-2009, those school years, the number of ELLs in schools went from 3.5 million to 5.3 million, which is a 51% increase. The reason behind both of these is that test scores from English language learners and test scores from students who are designated as attention deficit hyperactivity, basically any diagnosis, their scores can be exempt from mandated reporting, which would incentivize schools to diagnose as many students as possible, because then their funding is tied to that as well. Then the testing business, which I've mentioned earlier, I don't think anything needs to be said more about that. And there's also some folks who believe that the Common Core is a move towards privatization of education, because this was an author in New York who's an educator as well, believes that based on the exams that the students are going to be taking, the Common Core exams, scores will most definitely be lower, and because of Race to the Top and how they are evaluating teachers, most teachers, because of these low scores, will end up in the insufficient category, or not proficient. And because of that, we will see, people's perception of education will be that, oh, the world is crumbling, people are doing terrible, something needs to be done, and people think that that move is going to be towards privatization. Kind of a long shot, but it's there. So the big thing, my big question is, when does this all end? The Common Core seems great. It seems like something that we can work with, and instead of throwing it out and starting all over with something new, take it as a framework in which to build upon, because you don't want reform after reform after reform and reinvent the wheel every few years, which seems that way from a lot of educators that have been in the industry for a long time.
People think Common Core is so much better then the No Child Left Behind and its focus on state content standards and teaching the standards and the way the test was run, in that it was just causing kids to memorize facts and focus on that kind of stuff without any ever understanding of the facts, which I never, as a teacher, I never bought that. I mean, the kids have to know when things happened, but they can't really know when things happen unless they understand what's going on. So to say that, No Child Left Behind was bad just because it forced kids to take these CSTs it's oversimplifying things. Common Core is supposed to be teaching kids the skills they're going to need for the 21st century, and yet my concern is that people that are making these tests are people like the College Board is one of the people that's making these tests. All the College Board does is make tests. They don't really know what skills these kids are going to need for the 21st century. And I've had a lot of these discussions with my wife, who works in the real world, not in the world of education. And she needs kids to be able to do what she tells them to do when she does them. There are rules, procedures, things that have to be done at certain times. She doesn't need the kids to understand why 2 + 2 is 4 or why 3 × 3 is 9. She needs the kids to know that and be able to apply those skills in the situation without being able to classify it or rethink it or change the rules or whatever. So I'm not sure if Common Core is necessarily the direction we're going to based on people I know out in the real world. Education says it's great, but I question if this is really going to make a better workforce.
What I am most worried about is that our high schools will now become trade schools, where students will come in and sign up for a certain career or set of skills that they wish to learn, and then they will graduate with some sort of certificate stating they know how to do this, give them a job here. If anyone thinks that that is preparing a student for college, they are sorely mistaken. We owe it to our students, we owe it to future generations of children to make sure that they don't lose out on things like history, government, economics, art, science with projects, math with real data. It blows my mind. I don't understand it. I don't know how that they thought this was a solution. I think that we are dangerously close to falling behind in education. I keep using the term dangerously close because I want people to recognize how important it is. It is our obligation. It is of utmost importance. It is vital. It is crucial that we do not forget that a well-rounded education is the best tool that anyone can have to be successful as an adult in the job market.